And Lisa Abbott from Kentuckians for the Commonwealth.
I may need some, oops, sorry, we'll get there. Okay, thank you. My name is Lisa Abbott, and I'm a community organizer with a grassroots social justice organization that is a statewide organization in Kentucky. And I've worked in various roles, but my current role is coordinating the Empower Kentucky project, which is an effort to shape a people's energy plan for the state of Kentucky. We launched right after the EPA announced the Clean Power Plan, and it was clear that political leadership in our state from both sides of the aisle was not only opposed to the plan, but both candidates for governor were vowing that if elected, we would not comply. So we said, okay, well, maybe a grassroots social justice organization can take this challenge on ourselves and do a really meaningful public process and develop a plan with outcomes that are better for health, better for jobs, better for average bills, advance a just transition for affected workers, advance racial justice and economic justice, and, oh, by the way, comply with the Clean Power Plan. So that's what we set out to do. No small task. Kentuckians for the Commonwealth is a 35-year-old grassroots organizing group working for a better quality of life for all Kentuckians and for a vibrant and healthy democracy. And we do believe that right now in Kentucky, as well as elsewhere around the world, we have a real opportunity to shape a just transition to a clean energy economy. In Kentucky, all of our energy eggs have been in one basket for decades. Last year was the first year that coal's share of our electric energy generation fell below 90%. It fell to 87% last year. But that landscape has been stable for a long time. That energy landscape and political landscape that it supports have been in place for a long time, and it's changing rapidly due to lots and lots of factors. Our aging fleet of coal plants is retiring, and we have a choice about what is the next economy, what is the next energy system. And hopefully we can bend that arc in a direction that supports health and climate and equity. So we set out to shape a people's plan. You can see some of the goals of the project. In the fall of 2015, we are planning and hoping to release the results in mid-April of this year. So the things that I'm sharing with you today are preliminary. We knew that in times of transition, process really matters. It really matters that people have an opportunity to have their voices heard, their stories heard, to have input and discussion. So among other parts of the public process that we organized, we held community conversations in every congressional district last spring. These were 3-hour programs that included a local foods meal and facilitated table conversations. The key questions we asked in those events, as well as in an online survey and interviews and house meetings and many other ways that we engage people, started by asking people to share for 3 minutes each a brief story about their relationship to Kentucky's energy system. Because we found that in Kentucky, and I suspect this is true elsewhere, people have a really intimate relationship with our energy system. They've worked in the mines, they have asthma, they have trouble paying their bills. There's just a host of ways. Their grandfather had black lung. There are a host of ways that our lives are deeply connected to our energy system. And if we start by talking about the abstractions, we miss the opportunity to really build those connections. So we asked people to share their story, what their vision for Kentucky's energy future was, what they think that will take to move in that direction, and their ideas about how do we begin to move in that direction without leaving groups of people behind. So these are just some stories to give you a flavor. We had every seat at the table was filled in these 6 community conversations around the state. The seats were free, but you had to reserve your seat at the table. And 750 people in all took part, and in the entire process we've had direct interaction with people providing input into the plan from 1,200 people. across the state. We were very intentional about encouraging a really broad sectors and diversity from each community to participate, and we're thrilled with the participation. This slide shows what we heard when we asked Kentuckians about their vision for Kentucky's energy future. You can see that there are a number of things that jump off the page, a really strong interest in renewable energy, especially solar, certainly in health, and certainly a real concern about ensuring that there are good jobs being created and that the workers who work in the fossil fuel industry, that they're provided an opportunity for a just transition. We also, as part of this process, have undertaken our own economic justice analysis. The EPA, when it issued the Clean Power Plan rule, said states must have meaningful public engagement. They didn't define that, so we've developed our own sense. And then they recommended that states do an environmental justice analysis. Well, did I mention I'm a community organizer, not a health professional, and we're a grassroots organization. So our environmental justice analysis team is about a dozen volunteers from around the state, led by a woman who graduated last year from the University of Kentucky. She's done just a phenomenal job. We're really thrilled. And obviously what we put forward can benefit from improvements and advancements. But here's one map, for example. This is a map showing cumulative pollution or risk of exposure. We looked at about a dozen indicators of pollution or proximity to polluting facilities across the state. And you can see that the two areas of our state where coal mining takes place are well represented in terms of cumulative pollution. That's in the east and in the west. And then the dots on this map are the location of our coal-fired power plants. So you can see people living in the western part of the state are actually doubly exposed to both extraction and burning. This map also includes other other pollution indicators that are not related to the energy system, like lead exposure and more. So out of the public process and thinking about the environmental justice analysis, we are developing a people's plan that will be released in April. It has 4 main sections or chapters, and then many, many recommendations about what our state can do related to each of these headings. So the first is we really believe that Kentucky can benefit by accelerating energy efficiency and renewable energy across our economy. And then we also include specific recommendations in the plan about ways to create jobs and support just transition, to prioritize health and equity, to support local solutions, to invest fully and fairly in this energy transition, and to meet our obligations to the climate. And the last one is sort of a catch-all. We heard from many, many people across the state, why are we just talking about electricity? We also need to be talking about our food system and our tree canopy and our transportation system. So the last set of recommendations is a more holistic view. Key recommendations within the plan. So the plan is very long and has recommendations on all of those 7 labels. These are just a few. We recommend that Kentucky significantly ramp up our efforts in energy efficiency in order to save over a 15-year period 15% of what we would otherwise be consuming, with a very strong emphasis on achieving 18% of the total energy savings from programs that directly benefit low-income households. We recommend Kentucky meet a 25% renewable energy goal, with at least 1% coming from distributed solar. We recommend that Kentucky put a price on carbon, a low price in this case, and I'm happy to talk about that, to 2 things that will do. One is it generates revenue to be invested in a just transition and in some of the energy efficiency programs. It also was necessary, we found in working with consultants and doing the analysis, if we just do the first things, the energy efficiency and the renewable energy, and reduce the amount of dirty energy that Kentuckians are consuming, the computer model showed us that other states around us would happily continue to buy our coal-fired power. So we would become the designated smoking area, which in some sense we already are, but even more. Just actions in Kentucky, we're not an island, we're connected to very complex electricity grid. So we found that it was important to put a price on carbon to make our coal power more expensive and less competitive in that regional market in order to achieve emissions reductions in the state. We also looked at a lot of different prices. We heard earlier the federal government, at least in the last administration, thinks the price on carbon, the true cost is somewhere just south of $40 a ton. We chose this low price after looking at the various scenarios and found that higher prices at this moment in time in Kentucky will simply accelerate our rush to natural gas, and that this low price was enough to achieve our goals for reducing emissions without accelerating the rush to natural gas. It would give us the 15-year period to begin to implement more renewable energy and energy efficiency. So with those things, looking at those major recommendations, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and a low price on carbon, and also not allowing burning of our forests to count as low carbon energy, that was another important piece of our scenario. These are the outcomes, and these are preliminary. We will release the report in April. But our plan, the Empower Kentucky plan, creates more jobs for Kentuckians than business as usual, improves health by lowering SO2 and nitrous oxides emissions, results in lower average bills for Kentuckians than the business as usual scenario. And actually this number on this slide is incorrect. On Friday, we looked at by 2032, it's actually $13 less than business as usual, not 10. That was looking at a different date. This plan generates almost $400 million over the 15 years to be reinvested in just transition for coal workers and coal communities. It reduces carbon dioxide pollution from our power plant sector, from our electric power sector, by 36%. The Clean Power Plan's goal for Kentucky was 31%. So this plan slightly exceeds that goal. It results in $11 billion being invested in energy efficiency, with a real priority within the plan's recommendations for low-income efficiency and industrial energy savings, because we're a heavily industrialized sector, and those jobs also really matter to Kentuckians. A couple other outcomes: fewer gas plants would need to be built over the next 15 years under this plan than the business as usual. We would actually, interestingly, have the same number of coal plant retirements in this 15-year period. We would use our existing fleet less. We would run those coal plants less. But the model that the consultants have been working with us on shows that the same number of retirements happen under this plan or the business as usual. In other words, the direction that our state's energy sector is heading in is retiring old coal plants, whether or not we do good things. So let's do good things while we go in that direction, is what we're saying. This plan would result in 1 gigawatt more of solar being built and 600 megawatts more of wind, and it actually would result in Kentucky importing less electricity than we would under the business as usual model. So where do we go from here? Obviously, we're releasing these outcomes in a very difficult political environment, both at the national level and in Kentucky, where our legislature was one of the only in the South with a divided chamber, and now, after the election, we're now supermajority Republican in both chambers. So it's a very difficult political environment, but we think that this plan is part of creating broader political will to do good things that produce better outcomes for Kentuckians in terms of jobs, health, and bills, certainly also in terms of climate. For us, we're a community organizing group, so this has been an unusual project for us to take on, and our plan is to use it as a foundation for alliances and collaboration and campaigning across the state. We see the biggest opportunity, obviously, at a very local level. How can we support the work in Louisville that's so powerful? How can we support pushing utilities around the state to do more and better energy efficiency? How can we support community campaigns to get more all-electric buses on the streets? So this project provides a broad overview and a narrative, and then we will be working locally to make good things happen wherever we can. I think it also has already strengthened the network and the political will in Kentucky to resist really bad directions and to continue to work for policy change where we can. And one example of that was just 2 weeks ago, a very powerful senator in the state legislature introduced a bill that would have decimated the homegrown solar industry that is very small in Kentucky, but it is growing like everywhere else. And he was the chair of the committee. They have the power in both chambers. This bill could have moved. And he said he was shocked by the public outcry from every corner of the state and withdrew the bill. And I'm not claiming that we did that, but we were part of doing that. And this project, I think, can produce some of those kinds of results. Happy to answer questions.